Hey, Happy Campers, Todd here at Great American RV SuperStores, and here we are on the front of our Prowler 255BHX. We're going to do a technician type delivery walkthrough on this unit. We're going to go over the operation of some of these components. Your unit may differ in brand names. If you want more information on those components or a deeper dive on these, you can find that on our YouTube channel under the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. And we're going to walk through here. On the front, we're going to start with our 7-way plug. Our 7-way plug will plug into the vehicle we are towing with, obviously, and that will transfer all of our lights on our unit, our blinkers, and so on. You're also going to have a 12-volt charge line that's going to pull off the alternator of your vehicle to help charge that battery while it is running and traveling down the road. You're also going to have your brake controller in your vehicle that follows through here as well and signals those brakes on when they need to operate. We also are going to have this silver cable on here with a loop on it. You need to put a lanyard of some type and hook it to the receiver hitch on your vehicle. That means that hitch that's on the back already bolted to your vehicle that you put the ball hitch into, that's where you need to hook it, maybe where the chain portions go or something like that. But never hook it to the ball hitch or the chains itself. This is intended if any of that stuff fails, this cable is going to pull out of that breakaway box right there, and it's going to activate the brakes on your trailer. This is only going to happen if we have a good 12-volt battery and this is hooked up properly. If we don't have a good 12-volt battery, it's not going to do anything because the power is not there to activate them. We also want to make sure that that little pin in that box is inserted properly and all the way so it's not activating our brakes while we're traveling down the road. Behind that, we have our dual propane tanks. Those dual propane tanks have a dual propane regulator. The way that regulator is going to work is you have a selector valve on there. You choose one of your two tanks, and that will be your primary tank. When that tank runs dry, you'll get a red indication on that regulator, and then it will automatically swap over to that second tank and not interrupt whatever you're using your LP for. Now that, once again, you'll have that red indicator. If we swap it over that secondary tank and it is full, then we're going to get rid of that red indicator and it will use that now as the primary. We can get our other one refilled so we're good to go and we don't have an interruption in our propane usage. Behind that, we have our battery storage center where we keep our batteries, and once again behind that we have our battery disconnect. That battery disconnect is used when we are storing our unit unplugged. So we don't have a shore power station to plug it in. We have power cord in the unit, nothing's there. We cut that battery disconnect off. That way we're not pulling battery power from that battery when we're sitting there, and we can go ahead and get whenever we get back to our unit, we'll have a little bit of 12 volts left. If we are using our unit, anytime that unit is plugged in, we want that battery disconnect on. That way our charging system is actually charging our battery. We have our manual tongue jack on the front on this one. You may have a power jack on yours. If not, easy upgrade. You have 3 bolts right there. Pull it off and put a power tongue jack on there. You have a wire that runs over to your battery, and that will provide you with the 12 volts you need for a power tongue jack. Here on the driver's side of our unit, we have entry into our pass-through storage right here. We'll see we have that solar controller system. We are pre-wired for each solar system. We can find more information on what those upgrades entail on that little QR code on the side, on the passenger side of our unit. Just to the left inside this driver's side entry, we also have our Lippert tire link system. We can upgrade. It has already ran the wiring for the power, already ran over there. We get that little module and the sensors for our tires, and we can monitor that while we're traveling down the road. You're also going to notice down here in the 4 corners of our unit, these manual stabilizer jacks. They are stabilizers only. They are not leveling systems. So when we want to level our unit as we're backing into that site, we need to purchase some stacker blocks, put them under our tires to level that unit from left to right, and we use our tongue jack to level it from front to back. Once we've done that, we manually crank these jacks down to the ground, and that helps stabilize and reduce movement in our unit. We always want these in a diamond shape. We never want them straight up and down, because if we do, we move around in this unit just a little bit, it's going to bend and break those jacks. That's not going to be covered under warranty. We also don't want to put a ton of pressure on there and lift our camper with them, because once again, too much weight is going to damage these jacks. So key idea, keep them in that diamond shape form when you extend them down. To help you do that, if the ground is too low, get some more of those stacker blocks and put them underneath it. As long as we keep that form, then that's going to actually stabilize our unit much better than any other option that we have like the straight up and down, or just putting them down just a little bit. Moving down the line, we have a vent up here. That vent has 2 tabs. In order to open it up, to close it, you'll just push them down and lock them in. That vent is for over our stove top. If we want to use that overhead vent over our burners, we can go ahead and exhaust that air out as long as the tabs are open. Whenever we're storing our unit, we want to close those tabs so we keep any insects or anything from building a nest in there. Over here we have our Suburban furnace outlet. That's our exhaust. When we're running that furnace, gas operated appliance, that exhaust is going to come out of here, and this may be a little warm whenever it is operating. Behind that we have our freshwater connection. Our freshwater connection, the little cap, we pull that off and we can gravity fill our tank right here by sticking a hose in it from our house, and that will fill up our onboard storage system. Onboard storage is just basically a fresh tank. We're going to use that if we go to a campground or dry camp somewhere where we don't have a city water connection, a hose to hook up. We'll kick on our 12-volt water pump in there, and that will supply water out of this tank to all of our fixtures in there. Of course, we want to eliminate any extra weight that we have in our unit, so we only want to put as much as we think we may need. If we put too much or we want to reduce the amount, there is a hose right up under here, a little blue hose with a valve, and we open that up and we can drain that water out of that system, reduce the weight on our unit. Of course, if we're not using it, we want to just get rid of that water anyway so it doesn't become stagnant later on down the road. Below our furnace, we're going to have our second gray tank right here. That is where we would hook up a 4-inch hose to be able to drain out that system. We'll talk a little bit more about our gray tank when we get to our other dump station there towards the rear. So here we are right behind the axles of our unit. We have our city water connection. City water connection is if we do have that hose bib at the campground or wherever we're at, we'll hook that water hose up, run it over to here, turn the water on, and we have water to our faucets. So that would be the other option compared to our freshwater tank system. Here down below we have our outlet for our sewage system. We have that one in the front for our second gray tank. We have another gray tank here as well as a black tank. Your gray tanks are going to hold your shower and sink water, right? So fairly clean water, there's no sewage in that. That system we can leave open all the time, of course, as long as we have that hose connection on here and a dump station at our campsite. Now, once again, gray tank, open it up, you can let that water drain out constantly as long as we have that hose hooked up. Our black tank, however, we want to leave that closed. That is sewage that is coming from our toilet. Leave that closed until our tank is either full or we're ready to dump. Only dump once again if we have that hose hooked up and we pull that valve, let anything that's in it go ahead and just drain out. We're going to have our black tank flush connection right here, which is a hose that is going to reach over to the other side with a little spray port. That spray port is going to help push any debris from the other side of the tank over to this valve and flush it out. We'll just hook our water hose up to it, turn it on, have this valve open, and that will drain it out. Now that's going to do a pretty good job. If we want to go a step further, we can do that, but we need to be very careful with this process because we can overflow our tanks if we don't monitor the system properly while we're doing it. So just that suggestion and warning, make sure we are monitoring our tanks if we take this pro tip. So the way we can do it is have our black tank flush hooked up, we close that black tank valve, and we let it run for about 30 to 60 seconds, build up a little bit of water in that tank, and then open that valve again. Do that several times, we're going to start to see that water get clearer and clearer, and we've done a better job of flushing out our tank. Now, if we don't want to do that, we certainly don't have to, just a suggestion. When we are done, we can do one of two things once again. Turn off that black tank flush, close that black tank valve, go over to our toilet, hold that pedal down, and fill our tank with several gallons of water that way, or we can close that valve, leave our black tank flush on for about 30 to 60 seconds once again, and fill that tank up with water. Once again, monitor your panel and make sure you don't overflow that tank into your camper, otherwise it's going to be a big mess. So once we've done that, leave that tank closed. We leave water in it because we're still going to have a little bit of debris, maybe a little toilet paper in there, and that's going to help wash it down off the walls. It's also going to help degrade that stuff that might be left in there because you're going to add chemicals through your toilet as well after you flush out your tank. RV toilet paper only, don't use anything else, that way it degrades properly. Use this system like you would a septic at a house. If you're not familiar for one, basically all you're putting in there is sewage and toilet paper, nothing else. If you do, it can get clogged up in these pipes and cause a lot of problems and expensive repair. Here on the back of our unit, we have our 30 amp twist lock plug. We insert it in there, turn it to the right to lock it in, and we have that little retainer ring. We want to put that in there to make sure that plug doesn't get loose in there and have any arcing. We want to plug this in first and then plug it into our shore power at the campsite. We also want to make sure that our AC systems are off so we don't cause any surges to that compressor. Down here at the bottom, just below our side right here, we'll see a red and blue line sticking out. Those are our low point drains. Low point drains are used to drain the water out of our plumbing system when we're preparing for winterization. Next step in that is adding RV antifreeze. If you want to do that, we have a video on that in our helpful hacks section. Up above me, we have our Lippert on-the-go ladder system. That is a bracket that is installed up top. That way we can get a telescopic ladder, hook it in there, and gain access to our roof. This is important because after all of our trips, we need to get up on that roof and check and make sure we didn't hit any tree limbs or anything that could cause damage to our rubber up there. We also need to maintain and wash that rubber up top as well. If we do get a hole in there, we need to go ahead and seal that up quickly. That way we don't have any water in that system. We can give it our insurance company and file a claim. Now, another thing we need to do when we're up top, on the sides, anything like that, around our trim, all around our lights, anywhere where there was a hole put in the side of our unit or the roof of our unit and around our trims up there, because we do have sealant up top, is we need to check that sealant every 60 to 90 days. We're checking for peeling, cracking, deterioration of that sealant. If we don't monitor and take care of that properly and reseal it after we've cleaned it, then we will end up getting water leaks. Manufacturers require that you maintain your unit every 60 to 90 days when it comes to that, just like changing the oil in your car. If we don't, manufacturers aren't going to cover any water damage due to a lack of maintenance. Here on the back of our unit, we are pre-wired for that Furrion backup camera system, giving us power to that camera. If we decide to upgrade to that Bluetooth camera system, we can have that monitor in our truck so we can see what's behind us while we're traveling down the road. Over here in this corner, we can see that we have a little plug-in for our coax. If we do have part cable, we can run that coax from there to there, and then we can scan for channels on the inside of our unit. Over here, we have our Suburban tanked water heater. It is electric and propane operated. We can go ahead and go over the operation of that when we get to the inside control panel. We'll also notice that we have caps on either side of our bumper. We can use our bumper as a storage place for our sewer hose. On the passenger side of our unit, of course, we have access to that pass-through bay right there, and we have our 12-volt operated awning as well as our 12-volt lights. Telling you that way you know if it stops operating, we can go to that 12-volt fuse panel on the interior and check our 12-volt component, our fuses, to make sure that they're not blown to get this working again in most cases. Now, our awning is mainly a sunshade. If we have any light rain, dew, or anything like that on it, we want to make sure that that is able to get ran off, as well as AC condensation that's going to come from our roof. If we don't, it's going to puddle up in the middle of our awning. That awning is going to collapse and it's going to cause some damage and an insurance claim. We don't want to go through that, as well as any high wind. It can take that awning, turn it into a parachute, and rip it off the side of your RV. You don't want to go through any of that. So high wind coming in, roll that awning in. Leaving your camper for an extended period of time, roll that awning in. Don't take the chance at it. Well, one thing we need to do whenever we roll that awning out is we need to pitch it either front or in the rear. And when I say pitch it, that means we need to pull one of the two sides down. So we have this little knob right here. This one's already done. We'll pull down on this arm right here and just pitch that awning. Once again, same thing on the rear. We can do either one, but only do one side. That water can run off here in the front or run off there to the rear and not puddle up on your awning. When we're ready to roll that awning in, we loosen that knob. That arm will push back up, and then we can roll that awning in the proper position. As we move down to our entry, we'll notice a little magnetic latch on the back of our door that's going to hold our door open whenever we use it. We have our manual steps right here, pretty easy to operate. Just flip them up and store them for travel, pull them down by the grab handles. We want to lubricate these hinge points every so often with silicone spray, not WD-40, because that's going to attract more dirt and grime and cause those hinges to get gummed up. Anytime we see any rust or we see chipped paint on here, preferably we want to get on it then, but just slap some black spray paint on there and prevent it from rusting. That'll cause issues down the road too. If we don't, we have our grab handle right here. push up on it, turn it to store it for travel, put it back in order to add safety when coming up the stairs. We have our coax connection port right here. This is for our outdoor TV, and we have that 110 connection right here. Plug that in, we can catch air and cable channels off of that if we have cable hooked up at the campground, obviously. And we have our 110 port right here. That 110 port is a GFCI protected outlet. You'll notice several of them in your unit, especially in wet locations. And the main breaker for that is going to actually be on an outlet generally found in the bathroom. We'll look at that when we go inside. If that connection doesn't work, maybe it's because we have too many griddles, coffee pots, hair dryers, all that stuff plugged in and operating at the same time, or one of those locations is wet. We want to unplug some of that stuff, check the locations, make sure they're not wet, and then go over to that main outlet and reset it. We'll go check the operation of that when we get the inside. All right, so as we walk into the door, we see our control center right here. This control center does have multiple tanks on it. We do have 2 gray tanks on this unit, only 1 black tank though. So it's a generic panel they put in all their units. But according to what you have, you can push that button and see what our levels are in all of those tanks, as well as our battery as well. Here down below it, we have our water pump system. That water pump system is going to pull from that fresh tank, obviously, if we have water in it, and supply water to our fixtures. If we're out dry camping, we don't have that city water connection. If we're not using our pump, we want to go ahead and turn it off. We have a city water connection, turn it off. If we hear that pump constantly running and we don't have any water running, we want to turn it off. If our tank is empty, we want to turn it off. You're preventing the opportunity for that pump to get overheated and dry and burn up. Over here we have our water heater switches. This is LP and this is electric. Our LP gas, obviously we need our tanks on. We'll flip that switch and we'll notice a DSI fault light pop up right there. That's going to stay on until that water heater ignites and begins to heat up the water, and then it will turn off unless there is an actual fault. To turn it off, just flip that switch. When we want to run water heater electric, we just flip that on. There's a heating element in there. As long as we're plugged into shore power, we can go ahead and turn that on, and that will begin to heat that water electric. Now we can turn both of these on at the same time. It'll heat the water a little bit faster. That's perfectly fine as long as we have that electric and propane source on. Now when do we want to use our LP gas on our water heater? Well, we want to use that when we maybe have a lot of stuff going or working on our unit electric wise. You do only have a 30 amp service, so this does reduce your capacity to operate some of your items at the same time when it comes to electric. So that's if you're tripping out on the camping pole at the campground, go to LP and just use that rather than using your electric, and that will help with that issue. Off to the right we have light 1, that is for our awning lights outside. Light 2 is our interior lights, and we have our awning extend and retract. Everything on this panel is 12 volt operated, so we have any issues with it, we're going to go over to our 12 volt fuse panel that we'll touch on later to check and see if any of the fuses are blown. Here we are in our kitchen. We have our 110 operated microwave right there. Remember the vent outside we talked about has those 2 latches to open it up. That is for their hood range vent in order for that air to exhaust out. Close it whenever we are done. That way no insects and stuff build a nest in there. We have our 2 burner Greystone stove. When we're in travel, we need this glass top down so it doesn't fall and break. When we're ready to use our burner top, we just flip it up, and we have our 2 burners. We choose what one we want to use. We turn the LP on outside, and we just push and turn, and then it will light that designated burner automatically once you start pushing it. I have a little light over here on the side to light up those knobs if you want. Very important thing about our LP system. If we have changed our tanks out or we just pulled our unit out of storage, more than likely we had the valves off, we're going to end up with air in our LP system. Before we go to operate things like our furnace or our LP water heater system, we want to come over to our stove and bleed the air out of that system. In order to do that, you do exactly that, what we just did. We turn our LP system on, we come over here, and it may take a little while for the air to make its way out of here before that burner lights, but once it lights, let it run for about 30 to 60 seconds, and that's going to help reduce any faults in your other gas appliances whenever you go to operate them. And behind me here we have our EverChill refrigerator system as well as our freezer. Have a cold to cooler temperature control right here as well as our on-off button. and our freezer also has a temperature control unit in it as well. When we are done using our camper, we're storing our unit and we're not storing it plugged in, we want to go ahead and turn this system off and defrost it and get all of the water out of here. There's no drain tubes on this fridge, so that water's just going to sit in there. We need to get it out, that way it doesn't drain out and damage any of the wood components around our fridge. Also want to reduce the opportunity for mold and mildew in that fridge as well. So make sure we're defrosting it, getting all that water out, and we don't have any damages. Down below our stove top and our fridge, we have two items. We have our 110 12 volt control center right here where all your breakers are going to be, and your 12 volt fuses for your 12 volt components. They're all labeled so we can see what they operate in the event that one of these items doesn't work properly. We can come check our breakers and check our fuses, make sure they're not tripped or blown. Below that, you'll notice a little grill. You might hear a little fan running. That is our converter system, essentially just a battery charger. Anytime we're plugged into shore power, you're going to hear that system running and maintaining your battery. And to our left here, we have our RV COLP detector. That is to warn us of any cautious gases. We'd see that little green light right there lit up. That lets us know that it is powered on. It's a hardwired 12 volt component that's pulling off our battery power. And we need to come and test it by hitting that little test button every so often and make sure that that chirp is activating and that it is working properly. These do have an expiration date either printed on the front of them, or you remove these two screws and it may be stamped on the back side, and that lets you know when that expires. They're generally good for about 5 years. You want to stay on top of making sure that's functioning properly. We're also going to have our smoke detector in our unit too, powered by a 9 volt battery. We need to check that battery and check the chirper on that alarm as well to make sure that it is working. It will also have an expiration date on it. Our dinette booth obviously will turn down into more sleeping space. We can pull our table up and remove those two poles. You'll see our little black bumpers right there. We set that tabletop down on, move our cushions over on the top and add more sleeping space. Our couch will fold down into a bed as well. Lift up from the bottom, drop it down. When we're putting it back, lift on the bottom. We want to grab the backer, not the cushion of that couch, so we're not ripping the cushions there. We have our Air XL Coleman thermostat right there. Let's go over the operation of how our AC and heat system work. This is our Air XL thermostat right here. You'll have one for each separate air conditioning system in your unit. In order to operate, you'll hit that space bar down at the bottom. You'll cycle through. You have the options for fan low and fan high. This will only circulate the air throughout your unit. It will not cool your unit. So when we're ready to go into that cool mode, we hit it one more time and it's going to go into cool high or cool low. This will keep the fan on all the time. Whether your compressor circulates off or not, it will continue to blow that fan, so the air may not always be cool while it is initiated. Now, one thing that you need to remember is during the summertime, you really actually want it running on cool high, so it will help clear out that condenser and dry it up during those hot months where that compressor is only cycling every so often. If we want to keep it in auto where that fan shuts off, whenever the compressor shuts off, we're going to hit it one more time. We're going to go into auto and we can choose our low or high speed. Once again, that fan shutting off when the compressor shuts off and it's done cooling. For your central thermostat, more than likely in your living room area, you will have that heat option that will initiate the furnace as well. When we want to turn that system off, we just continue to cycle through till we get to that off position. When we want to change our temperature, we can just use these arrows right here. That will adjust our temperature on our unit. The initial temperature that you have on here, this is your actual room temperature that you have. Our rooftop AC, this is our ceiling assembly from the interior. We have these quick dump valves. If we get to the campground, we want to cool off this living room area quickly, we can open both of those up and the air will only come out of here. Now we do have a ducted unit, which means we have these circular vents in the ceiling that is going to help transfer the air throughout our unit. In order for it to come out of those though, we have to make sure that those quick dump valves are actually closed so the air can push through. Over here on the side, these are our return vents right here. They have filters on them. We can remove those by pulling those two tabs and dropping it out. We need to clean those regularly to make sure we're not restricting air to that AC. Here we are in our bathroom. Fairly cut and dry. We got our shower, our toilet, and we're also going to have our GFCI main outlet in here. We'll go over the operation of all these items. Our shower, pretty cut and dry. Once again, we have that hot and cold fixture down at the bottom. You hook to city water, just use it like normal. You're going to eventually run out of hot water if you use it too long because you do have that tanked unit. On our shower head though, we can shut off that shower head with that on-off button right there. Generally used whenever you're dry camping. You're trying to conserve the amount of water you're using from your fresh tank and the amount of water you're putting into your gray tank because you don't have a city water connection or you don't have a dump station. We can easily turn that shower head off there rather than messing with our hot and cold, finding that sweet spot again. We can turn it off in between showering, rinsing off, and lathering up. We do have an overhead vent up here with a fan on it. It's always suggested when you're taking a shower to open that vent lid to get any heat and humidity out of here. That way you don't have any opportunity for mold and mildew to sneak up on you in here. We have our toilet. We talked about how to do the black tank flush, where the toilet goes. It all goes to the black tank, right? We have a little foot pedal on the side to flush. We're doing two things in here, number 1 and number 2, right? So number 1, hit that pedal, flush it down, water's gonna come out, push it down. Well, if we're doing number 2, we got solids, right? Barely depress that pedal down and wanna make sure that ball valve at the bottom stays closed. And we're gonna fill that bowl about half to 3/4 of the way up. That way there's enough water to actually flush those solids down into our tank and we don't have any issues with it clogging up our plumbing. We want to add our chemicals in through here. We can also add that fresh water after we flushed out our tank system and have our valve closed again. We can go just wide open that valve and let that fresh, clean water get into that tank before we go to store it. Let's talk about our GFCI. So here we have our GFCI outlet. This is our main one where we would go to reset if the other ones aren't working. If they aren't working, come over here. More than likely, we're going to see a little red light on here, okay? We have 2 buttons. That test button is going to simulate this outlet being tripped. We see we have a red light. We come in here, we hit this reset button. That red light should go off and send power back to those outlets. Now, we talked about it earlier. If it happens to trip again right off the back or it won't reset, we want to go unplug some of the items in those GFCI outlets and make sure we're not overamping it, and maybe plug them back in one at a time or check to make sure that those outlets aren't wet. Up above our dinette booth, we can find a little backer location on our wall-mounted TV. We have our coax connection here. That coax connection will be for our air antenna as well as our cable option. If we are using our air antenna, meaning we don't have cable, we're trying to pick up those air channels, we want to make sure this little green light is on, and if it's not, we just hit that little button right there. That is our 12-volt boost for that air antenna to help us catch more channels in the area and have them come in clear. If we're scanning for part cable, we have that coax connection at the campground, hit that button and make sure that light is off so we can now scan for channels and it won't scramble the cables. Not too much to go over our bedroom. Of course, we have storage under the front of our bed, and we also have another coax plate for our bedroom TV.
Well, we hope you found that resourceful, but wait, there's more information on our Great American RV YouTube channel. This channel right here, find the playlist Hap's Helpful Hacks. We go over different products in this unit and we'll take a deeper dive with more diagnostics, more information, as well as helpful tips when you're out camping. Tell your buddies, tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all those awesome things on YouTube, TikTok, wherever you found us, and keep watching here at Great American RV SuperStores, where we bring the how-to you.